people were very, intrigued at knowing how do you actually forecast your financial needs, right? And that is especially when you're at a stage where you're trying to build a company. You don't know what you're essentially going to do 2 months down the line, right? You might be going up for fundraising. What is the amount of money you want to raise? How is that justifiable? How do you, and all of that boils down to your financial needs, right? What are your financial predictions? So how do you go about that piece?
Yeah, I think that is a very difficult one to answer. I'll tell you why. Because see, whenever the question of the situation involves stakeholders, which is not you and the entire world, it becomes difficult to control the outcome. Okay, so I would say this, and please, guys, feel free to put your point of view. I would say that always important to have these predictions at least 12 months in advance. Very important. A lot of entrepreneurs get stuck in this cycle. They think that, acha, everything's going well, no? Like we have a lot of cash and everything is going well. And then suddenly 2 months before they implode and then like, "Arey, 2 mahine baad hum salary kaise denge?" It happens to every one of us. So, doesn't mean that we all end up doing what Byju's has done. That's not the, literally the answer. There are much better ways of doing it. But what I'm trying to say here is that if you fall in that situation, which will happen to you, by the way, which happens to every one of us, and that's a very natural situation to come to. But what we need to remember is that we are masters of a company, as I think Sugata was also saying in the last line, right? We own the company. Even if you are given up 30%, 40%, 50% equity, the person who's coming in with that equity, their responsible is to actually give you money. That is their asset, right? That is the asset they're actually giving you. So they technically saying that, okay, my investors are not giving me inputs. They were not supposed to give you inputs, honestly, right? That's a wrong expectation. If they're giving you inputs, great. But if they're not, please calm down. That is not what their that is not what their job is. I mean, I don't know why people keep fretting about that. मुझे input नहीं दिया, ये नहीं दिया. अरे क्यों input देंगे? तुम्हारा customer तुमको input देगा. Okay. So what again, coming back to Sogato's point, try anticipating it 12 months in advance. Try thinking that, okay, if this is the okay, and I think this is helpful. I mean, please, everyone can add their opinion that a conservative estimate and an optimistic estimate, both estimates of how, where will you reach, and essentially two ways. Like if you are able to raise money or raise debt also, please don't take debt out of the equation. Debt is very important. If you are able to raise debt also, out of these two, and if you're essentially your cash flow from investing suddenly goes up, then what is your revenue ends at the end of that financial year? Or if you are not able to do that, where does it end at, right? But it is an exercise which needs to take into account that no matter what, the company cannot go bust, right? This is very important. You have to survive. It's a game of survival after all. Like ultimately, if you see a lot of people who have done well, at some point of time, you won't even know. At some point of time, they actually survive. They had no customers, no revenue. So entrepreneurs who are like really good entrepreneurs have very good survival instinct. They know that no matter what, nahi, jana hi nahi denge, bas, we'll catch on to it and hold on to our company till the last breath. So I think that's very heavily understood, extremely important quality to have. But anticipate the need 12 months in advance, and take these two scenarios of one optimistic, one baseline conservative scenario. See where your revenues are ending, and actually when you go to the go to investors as well. If you pitch in this particular language, again, see you come out as someone who's more mature. If you say, let's say I have two options in front of me. I can raise $3 million, and if I raise $3 million, this is where I reach. And I can also raise $1.5 million, and this is where I'll reach, right? And you have to understand one thing. If you say $3 million, this is where you reach, there is a risk also, the reward also. The reward that if that person actually trusts you and believes that what you're saying is right, that means that you're enhancing his future cash flow. So he believes that your his equity in your company is going to increase in value, right? So he's going to get happy with that. But if you fail to deliver what you're saying, your credibility goes down, and then the chance of you getting a lesser valuation than what you got this time, which is a down round, which is extremely a bad way to kind of go with, right? Because investors have much bigger rights than what entrepreneurs have naturally, because they're bringing in capital. So, so very, very important. Please realize that ultimately when you're putting conservative and optimistic in motion, be realistic as well. Like, don't go ahead and say that, okay, I'll reach, $100 million in ARR in this point of time. And if I say that, people will get happy. They won't. Rather, हमारे पे जो qualities नहीं होती है, we are not good at anticipating how a cash flow and a statement and a P&L statement will look like. And the people at the other end, people like Mr. Rohit, are very, very good at what we are not good at. So please don't underscore that. So if you're telling them 100 million ARR, they look at it from like 1,000 different lenses and actually take home 10 million ARR. So, but if you say 20 million ARR, there's a high chance they might actually take home 20 million ARR because they know that you're not delusional. So that plays on the mind as well. So please understand that the reason why startups do well is because there are people with capital who understand how companies are built, and they have the horizontal understanding of how different sectors have actually come up all across the globe, and they know financial statements like on the back of their hands. If they are partnering with people who are great at kind of building things from scratch and hiring people, getting the culture built, and that is why it's a match made in heaven. So please try to understand and never underscore the importance of good investors because they do bring a lot of things into the equation. And as you said, Himanshu, I would kind of long-term answer, but I would look at it this way.
Thanks, Aniket, for that. I think what you said at the end, right? Like whatever number you offer to your investors, your customers, your organization, you will be held accountable, right? At the end of the day. So I think that aspect is very important. I would just add one thing to maybe dimensionalize the question that Shogoto was asking is, revenue or cost or all of these things are in many ways output metrics, right? It's almost as if the revenue of a company or the profit of a company is an equation. It's a multiplication of different things, right? How many customers do I get? What is the revenue per customer? What is the revenue growth per customer? And a variety of things. So you probably can't forecast what your revenue is going to be, probably can't forecast what your costs and profits are going to be. But what you can possibly forecast is how many customers am I going to grow from where I am today? What is the cost historically been to acquire each of those customers? What does that mean from a cost perspective that I'm going to inquire? How much inventory, for example, do I need to keep in hand to fulfill the orders for all of those customers, right? So these in-process building blocks, which all add or multiply together to get that answer that you ultimately need to showcase to an investor, is what you have control over. And those are probably things that, as Aniket said, even 12 months in advance, you can and should have a way to forecast, right? And aspects such as your strategy, are you doing hub and spoke? Is your customer doing deliveries? Are you doing deliveries? Your vendor doing deliveries? Are you doing deliveries, right? That probably gives you some insight into how much of this you can actually influence, right? Can you grow this number by 20%? It depends a lot on what your business design is, right? What your model is. And those things, I think, would be the building blocks, to sort of be able to predict things in advance, is how I would think about it.
Yeah, I think Rohit, a fantastic point made. I think, easier said than done, but always in a conversation, I'm saying this to everyone here, please understand that what is the background of the person you're talking to, and you have to understand that person essentially will have an understanding about certain things, and please don't try to change their mind or try to repeat things which they already know. I mean, it makes no sense. You're literally wasting their time and wasting your time as well. It doesn't make sense, right? So, but what Rohit is also saying here is what you have, which they don't have, is that you have empirical anecdotal data, right? Which and can be always leveraged on, because see, ultimately, even if you go to ChatGPT 4.0, you won't be able to gather data that you have taken on an anecdotal empirical fashion from your customers, right? So ChatGPT के पास भी नहीं है, किसी के पास नहीं. That is what makes you special. So you have to always and the most brilliant entrepreneurs out there are able to cull out insights from them in a super logical manner from first principles, and then show that to actually emphasize on where they will reach in 12 months, right? And essentially what Rohit was also trying to say, we call it the bottoms up approach. What he was also trying to say is that always focus on parameters you can control. You technically can't control your revenue. I mean, I think I hope we all understand that. What you can control is your return on advertising spend. You can control which are the channels you're actually going for. What is the amount of SG&A expense that you will have. These are the things that you can control. And literally what Rohit said, that it's like a plus and minus of all of these beautiful variables. And you can say then that, okay, this is what I've understood is the building block. now I'm going to take either this approach or that approach. And then, I feel this is how my company is going to look like 12 months down the line. So the bottoms up approach, that is why it helps a lot, I guess, when you go back to your roots and say that these are my customers. And I actually like to build this ICP concept quite a lot, ICP, ideal customer profile, and say that, okay, these are my ideal customers. This is the demography, this is the gender, this is the age, A, B, C, D. And then say that, okay, in this demography, and I like to do this a lot, and I would encourage all of you to do that. Look at your all existing customers that have purchased from you till date, break them up in separate cohorts, and say that this cohort is just mind blowing, and in future I'm going to invest only in this cohort, and that is why I can estimate my future revenues to scale up beyond the proportion. So then what happens is the other person realizes that this guy not only has an idea what are his cohorts, he actually knows which of these channels is going to give him maximum money, and he knows how can he invest more capital in that channel to get to that revenue stream. So you realize that, right? I mean, the person on the other end then starts believing that the entrepreneur is so mature and knows कि उसके हाथ में क्या क्या है, and is ready to do anything, ready to go to heaven and earth and make sure that no matter what, the parameters under his control are optimized to an extent where the company gets valued in the best possible way. Yeah.